In this segment of the Realm Kast, we're delving into some heavy subjects related to addiction and self-harm. If these topics are sensitive for you, feel free to check out the timestamps on our YouTube channel so you can navigate through the episode more comfortably. If you're personally dealing with these issues, find helpful links in our show notes where you can seek assistance and support. Welcome to the Realm Kast, Earthrealm's ultimate Mortal Kombat podcast, the official podcast of Mortal Kombat Online. Prepare yourselves as we plunge into the depths of the Mortal Kombat multiverse, bringing you well-known and significant members of the Mortal Kombat community. I'm your host, the Mortal Kombat Phantom, and with me as always is my co-host, our lore master, Yanni. Welcome, Yanni.
Thanks, Phantom. This is the Realm Kast, where every warrior has a story to tell, and today's combatant this is something I definitely should have asked you ahead of time, just in case of pronunciation, but Shahjehan Khan. Did I get that right?
You got it,
Great. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. This is super cool.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to jump into your career with Mortal Kombat and what you've done a little bit later on in the show. But first of all, let's just ask you a couple warm-up questions. Do you have any favorite Mortal Kombat characters?
So, as I told you guys before we started this, I am a little behind on my Mortal Kombat knowledge. I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of, I want to say, 10 to 12-year-old Shahjehan, who was really into the arcade original
Perfect.
one
Yeah.
and the Super Nintendo version.
Great.
So, I guess I would have to go with the OG Liu Kang. I remember I just gotten Super Nintendo as a 10-year-old or whatever, and I asked my parents to get me Mortal Kombat. They said absolutely not. So then I would go over to a family friend's house to play it because he was like already 16 years old and it was like cool for him to have it. So I was like the nerdy, like younger kid playing with him. But yeah, I guess I'll go with Liu Kang, maybe Sonya as well. Honestly, I guess if I'm thinking about it, my mom did dress me up as Raiden when I was 8 years old. Yeah, okay. Maybe those three. If I can give like a three-way tie.
Yeah.
No. Clearly, I didn't
Solid
think.
three-character
I did
pick.
not prepare, guys. I'm just going for it.
That's
That's awesome.
perfect. Obviously, you came into the fold really with the original Mortal Kombat game. Did that sort of
Yeah.
continue on later? Did you continue to keep up to date with a few of the games after that?
No, and I'm so sorry to your listeners. Like honestly, I have not even played the game in a really, really long time, and I'm trying to get over some of my guilt for now being as much of a part of it as I am. So it's very cool. Any interaction I've had with the community so far has been like nothing but positive, especially for me as I mentioned. I'm just kind of like a working actor. This was like a completely unplanned modeling gig, which then turned into this super cool thing, which does like fulfill a part of my childhood. You know, obviously, if you told me when I was a kid that I'd be able to do something that I would never have believed you. But so yeah, I have not really kept up with it. I still have not played the new one. I'm embarrassed to say.
But you have seen clips of it.
I have seen clips here and there. To be perfectly honest with you, it's a little weird right now. Like I didn't realize it would be this much of a likeness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm like they have my birthmark on the guy, and it's like my face, man. And I mean,
Yeah.
I knew that it would be somewhat. I had seen images of the previous face model versions of Quan Chi and stuff over the different years and stuff. And so honestly, and I'm sure we can talk about this later, this whole like signing away your likeness and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely
But
gonna
like,
get to that.
I thought it would be a little bit more of a mix of the two of us. And in some shots that I've seen, it kind of is, but it's my face, and it kind of freaks me out sometimes. So
for those of our audience members, just to fill the audience members in that are listening in right now, you were actually the face model of Quan Chi in Mortal Kombat 1. And that's how you tie into this great big world of Mortal Kombat franchise. There's so many different people that have so many different inputs into this game, and we're going to be going definitely deep into how this happened and kind of your thoughts on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Before we do that, though, let's talk a little bit about your career. You are a voiceover artist. You're an actor, musician. Like you said, you even had a modeling gig to get this position. And you are a fellow podcaster with your award-winning podcast, King of the World.
that's right.
So kind of tell us, how did you start down this career path? Like, this is a very broad career, and there's so many different facets to it.
Absolutely. Honestly, I credit my love of art and creativity to my parents. My parents are immigrants from Pakistan. They settled here in the Boston area in the 70s. My parents aren't musicians themselves, but I was exposed to all sorts of music. So music was kind of like the first creative thing that I always did. I started playing guitar and piano and stuff. And along that trajectory, I like started doing some high school plays. So that's kind of how I got a little bit into acting. But then I was a huge stoner college dropout, so I dropped out a bunch, and then somewhere in there, me and a friend started this punk band called the Kaminas, which has been described as a Muslim punk band or a South Asian punk band. We started around 2003, 4, 5, and we never got, like, super famous or whatever, but, like, we got to do some pretty cool stuff. We've been around for about 20 years. We got to tour the world playing music, and that kind of became my life for a long time. I also, got sober about 12 years ago. That's kind of like a huge part of my story, which I'm pretty open about on my podcast too. In terms of acting, I sort of got back into it after getting sober. So I joined like a theater troupe here in Boston. I've been at it for the last 10 years, I would say, as like a working, struggling actor, whatever. And in the last 2 or 3 years, some pretty cool stuff has started to happen. I got to be on Succession this year. I got to do a couple of other bigger things which are going to come out. And that's one of the same agency that I'm with now. They hit me up with this random, what was called a face scanning gig at the time. And I didn't know what it was. And I had to sign some NDAs to even figure out what it was and stuff. But that's just a quick summation. I'm still a very active musician. I'm an audiobook narrator. You know, you got to hustle, man. I am a contractor. I am married. My wife is a neuroscientist. She's like a punk rock neuroscientist, but her and I lead very like different lives. You know, I have like 7 to 10 jobs at any given time. So that's just kind of how I do this thing.
That's definitely reflected from what you've just told us. You've gone through, as we said, you're a voiceover artist, you're a musician, actor, podcast, etc., etc. There's a lot to you, and I kind of want to focus on the music for a second because I
Sure.
checked out your band, and
Oh, wow.
I checked out a few tracks. One of them that springs to mind, I think it was called Tun. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
very
Tune.
long name.
Yeah. It's a Urdu or Punjabi word for intoxication. And actually,
Okay.
yeah.
It was very, I think the word would be eclectic, and I mean that in
Thank
a
you.
good way. My favorite band is actually Faith No More, and they are all over the place with their genres.
That's very flattering. Thank you.
So I really liked how there's just so many different facets to the band itself, and going through different tracks, it felt like something different each time. So that was really awesome. It's always cool to actually go through the careers of the people we get to speak to, and
Yeah.
I mean yours is a very interesting one too, just because, as we said, you have a bit of something in everything, and that's really cool. And as you
Yeah.
mentioned, you were on Succession recently. Now I personally have not seen Succession yet, much to the dismay
That's
of many of
okay.
my friends who've been
My
telling me
wife
to
doesn't
watch
really
this.
care for the show either.
No, I've heard it's great. Phantom was telling me to watch it, or was it you?
Yeah, I'm one of the people that have watched it. I mean, one of the people. There's. I mean, it's a hit, successful show. So
It's pretty
Succession.
wild that it was my first TV show to be able
yeah,
to be
how
that.
did you end up getting casted for that?
I got a manager last year and I
Uh huh.
started auditioning and it was the first one we booked together, you know. It was
Yeah.
just off of a like this room that I'm sitting in right now. This is where I did the audition and stuff. And then from there, I couldn't believe that it happened. And I got to spend a week on the set and just kind of watch all these incredible actors do their thing. It's one of those things that you always wonder if you ever get an opportunity like that, how will you fuck it up? Like, how
Right.
badly will you, you know what I mean? And it was not the first time I had been on like a major set, but
Well,
so that's how it
in
happened.
coming into a show like Succession with such an all-star cast, and then landing a speaking role through it too, it's something
And
worth.
you never know. I forgot about that part that I was cast as party guest number 4. And
Uh-huh.
then I think my manager is awesome. Her name is Melissa. She, I think, convinced them to give the character a name. So I got this name, Len. And then I spent a week there. And with these sorts of things, they're called day player roles. So you never know if they're going to cut it. And for me, just even getting the booking was enough to prove to myself that, like, hey, I can do this. But I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was like, oh my God, I hope they don't cut me or whatever. But like, but not only did they not cut the role, it actually was the perfect like little part because it was memorable enough to stick with
Yeah.
people. The character got his own Reddit thread because
Did
people
he
were
really?
trying, yeah, people were trying.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. Like people were trying to figure out, like, oh my God, is this guy like based on this like New York Times reporter or whatever? And just like Yeah, man. Yeah, obviously I think the biggest show on the planet at the time, it's or whatever. Like I obviously got
Mhm.
texts from every person that I know, literally all over the world, and I'm just so grateful, man. It has not been an overnight thing for me. Neither was music. It's always very nice to celebrate your victories and stuff, but I think it's also just important for people to know just how much of a slog this thing is. And in some ways, it's great to see the fruits of the dreams that we all have to do stuff. But it's important to just remember, and I don't mean to be corny about it, but you do have to just love, like, what you do to keep
Yeah.
going after for such a long time. And I don't knock anybody for giving up or not giving up or just not wanting to do, I've had burnout and stuff. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of different things so that my, I think, sense of self is not just wrapped up in one of them and in all my creative endeavors, whether it's acting or music or voiceover. But I'm also just like a regular person. Like I don't live in Hollywood. I live at home with my wife and my cat. And like I like that.
Your career, as we stated, it's very broad in one sense. It's still the entertainment industry. Is there any particular focus that you like to do with your career that you like to hone in on, or do you just kind of take what's given to you and kind of go into it?
I've done some honing from time to time. I feel like as I mentioned, I'm turning 40 tomorrow. And honestly, like when I have just allowed things to happen and let go of the result, that's when the best things in my life have happened. And I don't say that in this ephemeral, that of course I plan things when I try hard and yeah, like there are steps that I took when my friend Asad, who's the head of our company, Rafelion Media, was like, hey, you want to host a podcast? I did have a day job and I was getting ready to quit. It was like the end of 2020, first year of COVID and stuff. And I just felt like I was at the creative stance. So my band, Caminos, it's been almost 20 years. So we had stopped touring regularly. And I just felt like the job that I got to do the stuff that I wanted to do was not letting me do the stuff. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, I was just so exhausted and I just didn't want to do it. So that was the start of a rebirth, I feel, 2, 3 years back. I have an uncle in Pakistan who once told me a really long time ago that you have to constantly redefine success for yourself and what that means. So that is something that I've tried to live by, and it's definitely not been easy for me. I'm very open about mental health and stuff. I think that I'm kind of on the precipice of another one of these changes. So I play with a couple of other musical projects now. One is called Ravi Shavi in Providence, and then the lead singer of Ravi Shavi, Rafe Rashid, I got to play in his touring ensemble for his new record called Kitchen Weapons. And we got to spend the summer opening for the band Deer Tick from Providence. And we got to basically
Oh,
just
nice.
spend. So I hadn't been on tour in a couple of years. So it just reinvigorated my love for music. And music is the first love and it'll always be that. And it's if I can just do that a little bit here and there, I do feel fulfilled and it allows me to do all my other stuff. I would obviously like to continue to grow as an actor. I mean, I'll just I just want to keep doing cool shit, like
Yeah,
it's
right.
not like yeah, it would be great to be able to do this a little more sustainably or whatever, but I just want to be better at the stuff I do.
I think that your band itself, I want to come back to it just for a
Sure.
second, not in the sense just to talk about the band. I mean, it's in terms of genre, as we mentioned, it's eclectic. It's all over the place. It's punk rock. You could identify
Yeah,
it as psychedelic rock, Punjabi, at times
sure.
rock, reggae, disco. There's a bunch of different genres which you could associate, and I feel like that's kind of reflected in. I mean, I was gonna say your career, but really within you as a person, in the sense that it's so diverse about how you approach life, and even with the different gigs that you take. And I mean that in
Mhm.
terms of uh, career choices. It's
Yeah,
sort of all over the place.
yeah, I think honestly it's a constant source of insecurity of accepting that all these different things make me up, but also sometimes being like, "Man, I wish I could just focus on one thing, and maybe I would be happier," but I don't think that's how it goes. I think, like, in the whole work-life balance thing, in some ways, this path that I've chosen is just not a balanced one, and
Mhm.
in the acceptance of that, you start to get a little bit of like, "Oh, yeah, maybe that's just how it goes for me," that maybe, like, 2 days a month, I'm gonna just doubt everything I've ever done, and that allows me to feel the highs of this other like amazing stuff that I get to do. I guess I'm not myself if I'm not constantly questioning things and
A
like
constant
wanting to.
imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
possibly.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, we can all of us creative people can relate to that kind of stuff. I think.
Well, for myself, growing up, I always heard people quote off that one saying, "A jack of all trades is a master of none."
Isn't exactly.
Yeah, and it always kinda hit me kinda hard. I was like, "I wanna be a master of something," but then when you hear the rest of it, the rest of that quote is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes it's better than a master of one." And I'm like,
Is that really the rest of that
Mhm.
quote?
"Yeah, yeah, that's the
Yep.
full quote."
I
And so
love when this happens, when you don't know the rest of oh, I had no
Exactly.
idea. Okay.
And it has so much more significance now when I hear that, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that's fine." I love it, I love
I'm
that.
gonna remember you and the thing my uncle said. So, yeah,
That's great.
awesome, awesome.
You touched on your sobriety earlier.
Sure.
I don't wanna distract or detract too
No,
much
no,
from
no,
your own show,
not
but
at all.
do you mind telling us a little bit about your story
Sure,
there?
yeah, of course, yeah, so I grew up in suburban Massachusetts, a very, quote, unquote, "safe," normal, not particularly diverse town. I started smoking weed with my friends, just like a lot of people do, and for whatever reason, it just really got me, man, and it just really became the thing that whatever I maybe I had anxiety as a kid or I felt a bit of a misfit or whatever it was, it just seemed to fulfill something in me, and it just sort of very quickly became everything to me. And, you know, grades started slipping, friends started getting worried, parents started getting worried, barely graduated high school, got to college, struggled a lot with, other mental health stuff. And, yeah, it got really bad. The reason I'm so open about it is because for me, particularly, it was the cannabis thing. I really didn't do much other stuff. So I recognize that for most people it's fine, but those of us for whom it is a problem, it can be really serious. So by the time I was 19, I'd been in treatment and hospitalized for that stuff. By the time I eventually got back to school and started the band, this was kind of like the basis of that. I would go in and out of treatment when my band started too, and that became like something that I could focus on and show up for while still struggling with the sobriety thing. And we did start to do well. We started to tour internationally. And then sort of like all the lines I had drawn in the sand that I won't perform high or I won't be in the studio, whatever. It just got more and more serious. I crossed all the lines. And by the end of what should have been one of the best years of my life, I was basically not really talking to my bandmates. I was completely unreliable and I had to leave what was supposed to be this really cool life and kind of start from scratch. So I was 27 when I actually like got sober. So that was just about 12 years ago. As I mentioned, I'm turning 40 tomorrow. It's been the best thing I ever did. It was super tough. These sorts of topics are uh, well enough known now that it's not as stigmatized as maybe it once was.
Yep.
It's still not. That doesn't mean that it's not for some people, for some communities, particularly. I think it's really cool that we're having, at least in the communities that I consider myself a part of, whether it's like a Pakistani community, Muslim community, South Asian community, whatever. I think we're having more and more of those discussions too. I think all of this stuff plays into it with talking about representation and stuff on screen and all that. But yeah, being a person in recovery is a huge part of who I am. And I'm always down to talk to people about it and support in any way I can. I still try to be in regular attendance at, for me, like meetings worked along with therapy and different stuff. And so it's still really, really important to me. And I'm still pretty passionate about it.
What was the process like? Obviously, that realization that you need to get help and you need to change something.
Honestly, my family, like I'm so fortunate, and this is not the case, I think, for many of us that don't have the familial support for whatever reason. And again, coming from a fairly privileged upper middle class background, parents are still together, family's very tight knit. If it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have made it. I was able to like move back in with them and recover there and go to different treatments and find therapists that way initially. And then again, later on, when I finally did get it, I have to give them more credit than anybody. But then from there, once I started attending different sorts of 12-step meetings, AA and NA and stuff, I was able to just find a community. Some ways are a little more dogmatic than others or whatever. I did sort of go through the formally writing process of the 12-step stuff. So for me, that was extremely transformational. I don't like judge anybody else's experience of whatever recovery you have. And I'm still really pretty close with a lot of people in that community today. So I think for me, the most important aspects of that were the community. I probably said the word community like 100 times.
All good. All good.
Yeah, like the support there, just knowing that people have your back. And that's also how I got back into music. I started going to this kind of treatment place center for artists. Because when I was getting clean for real or whatever, like I felt like the art stuff was behind me. I quit this semi-famous band or whatever. And I kind of had made peace with it. I was like, okay, I'll go back to college. Maybe I won't do that kind of stuff again. But you never know. You just never know what life has in store for you. So I'm a prime example of that.
You said as somebody who's in recovery, and that's what a lot of people who haven't been through the process don't realize is that you are in recovery forever at that point.
I think people have different ways of dealing with the language and stuff. Or sometimes if you're at one meeting, you might call yourself an alcoholic or you might call yourself an addict or this and that. I try to say person in long-term recovery when I'm in a forum like with you guys. For me, it's not a negative thing to say that it's more sort of an empowering thing, but I think that it can be different for people. And I try to like respect everybody that, with their
Do
process
you
and stuff. So,
do you find that you still face any internal struggles related to that past life?
not really with using drugs or drugs. I sound like a Dare fucking ad. Sorry. Can I swear on this?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Like not in terms of like getting high. I can do whatever. I've again toured the world. I do whatever I want. It's more the mental stuff, which is really the root behind all of this. I think from that is an ever evolving journey. I think I learn new things about myself. Like I mentioned, like this summer I spent touring again, being on the road. I loved it. Obviously, after it was over, I got super depressed because like my creative fun time was done. So I wasn't prepared for that because it had been 4 or 5 years since I did that. And it's such a pure, joyous thing to do that coming down from it is hard. And I'm also in the process of, I did a little reevaluation and I'm doing another kind of intensive writing thing right now just to reinvigorate myself creatively. So you do have to work on that stuff forever. But no, I do whatever. And the cool people are pretty respectful. People will always be like, I love it actually when if I'm at a bar or something with my wife or somebody is maybe they're just like, hey, I know you're sober. Is it cool if I am like, bro, it's been 12 years. I'm good. But I really appreciate that you asked me.
Yeah.
And if for some reason I wasn't, I would just leave. Being a musician, I guess I will say it depends. Like the context is very important to me. Like if it's just a bunch of like messy, fucked up people, then it's not so much that I feel like, oh my God, I might drink or get high. It's just more like it doesn't hold the same value for me. So it's not even about needing to do it or wanting to like lose that kind of whatever. Like it's just
Right.
it just doesn't hold the same place in my life. And and I definitely it's hard, when you're first doing this and you hear somebody like me being like, yeah, I've been sober for 12 years. You're like, yeah, bullshit. Like that's you didn't actually, you know what I mean? So I get that it's like hard to see that, for yourself until you do it. So
Yeah. Well, for those of our listeners who want to hear more about this story, and not just this story, but your life as a Pakistani American Muslim in the 20 years since 9/11, I definitely recommend checking out King of the World podcast.
thank you. Thank you I
Because
really appreciate you taking the time
y-
to
oh, definitely, like it's definitely worth a listen. Especially it's a good story to hear, and it's good to kind of understand these experiences that we all go through, and that's part of what we do here at the Realm Kast is kind of tell the stories of the different warriors that come on. So yeah, we definitely thank you for sharing a little bit of that with us.
thank you very much. Never thought I'd get to be referred to as a warrior in Mortal Kombat. It's still pretty crazy, man. Believe it.
I mean, there's definitely different ways that you can always apply the word warrior, and I definitely feel
Yeah.
it
No, for
applies
sure.
here. First, aside even just from the Mortal Kombat association, just from your journey, from what you've just told us, everybody
you.
has a battle that they're fighting, and it speaks for itself in terms of making you a warrior, really, in your own
Thank you so
regard.
much. Thank you.
Now, just before we do move into Mortal Kombat, I do want to touch on something that was kind of mentioned by the both of you, really. Firstly, with what you were just saying about growing up in a place that wasn't exactly very diverse, and then also with relation to your podcast, which is really maintaining a sort of diversity theme as an integral part of it. The industry itself, I say the industry, the entertainment industry really itself, has in my opinion, thankfully, seen a growing emphasis on diverse representation.
Mhm.
How do you yourself see your role in possibly contributing to this movement?
I mean, so also, again, because I'm not in the video game world, does it also struggle with the same? I've heard like bits and pieces of it, but also maybe not. I guess depends on which game, which community. I think like for me, so my band, I feel like early 2000s, we may have been part of a specific wave of stuff. I think the cool thing now is that there's just a lot more creators creating stuff, and that will inherently widen the scope and it already has. So
Mm.
I honestly I feel like a little bit of an elder now, whereas like before, I think with the band and stuff, we felt maybe like we were sort of paving the way in certain
Mhm.
ways. Now I'm actually really just in terms of the kinds of roles I get asked to, if we're talking about acting specifically, like the roles I go up for are all over the place. It's not that long ago that they really weren't, you know? So it's that part that's been really, really cool. And yeah, I just consider myself fortunate to like be doing this at the time that I am.
Leading into Mortal Kombat 1. What was that process like for you to get that role in the first place? Was it like Succession where you had your agent and your agent just pitched you?
It was weird, man. It was like I basically got a call or an email from my modeling agent, Jason, at the company Model Club. And it was a very nondescript thing. It literally just said K1 face scanning. That was the job. We didn't know what it was. So here's the deal. This is the rate. It's a one-time payment and it's for a video game. I don't know what it is. You have to sign an NDA to even express interest and for them to even tell you anything else. You just have to sign an NDA that you won't talk about it. I'm like, yeah, as long as I'm not a terrorist, I'll probably do it. I could use the cash. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So I
I just
signed.
sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you there. I just
Absolutely.
love that actual requirement now as
Yeah,
as
really.
as somebody with my origins as well and my skin tone, although
Yeah.
I've been inside a very long time, I look very white now, but
Yes.
but, like, just to hear that requirement of as long as it's not this, as long as I'm not a terrorist, etcetera, it's so
Yeah.
good to hear that nowadays, it really is, because that is just the typical
It's
stereotype.
no, and it's on, and that's with regards to your earlier question, it still happens, but there's enough there's more other stuff now.
Yeah.
So I'm at a place a little bit later where I don't anymore judge an actor for doing something like
Of
that.
course, yeah,
You know
no,
what I mean?
yeah.
But anyway, so I signed the thing and then a week later I got a call from I think somebody in the UK and she was like, "Hello, Shahjahan. Are you familiar with the Mortal Kombat universe?" And I lost my shit. I was standing like I'm in our second room, and my wife was she was finishing her PhD at the time, and I was like, yeah, I know what Mortal Kombat is. Are you kidding, bro? Like, uh, so she's like, yeah, like we want you to be part of the game, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll sign whatever you want, man. Let's do it. So then I signed, I think, the second uh form, and then it was like, okay, so they're gonna fly you out to Netherrealm Studio in Chicago, like the home of Mortal Kombat.
Mhm.
And again, something that I had not really interacted with for many, many years, but is still like a foundational part of me.
Mm.
One of the first video games I really enjoyed playing. But I still didn't know my role. Okay, so I was under the impression that I would be maybe just some minor character. They said like, we can't tell you yet what you're gonna be.
Yeah.
So then time comes to fly to Chicago. I get there, I get picked up, and they take me to what just looks like a nondescript office building or whatever. And I walk in, and it's like, holy crap, this is like everything you would imagine. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I go in, and then I sign the final form because there's one more that you have to sign. And that's when they come and tell me that, hey, like, so we picked your face out of thousands of faces to be the face of this character, Quan Chi. And then I was done and I was gone. And I actually got to spend the weekend in Chicago and see some friends. There was a couple of people in the like gym motion capture area. So I think I got to meet the guy who is the body. I believe I
Okay, yeah.
did get to shake his hand.
Okay.
It was cool. I got to kind of like watch them do stunts and like as they're like with all the thing there. And then I couldn't really talk about it for a couple of years. And then, yeah, earlier this year, they put out a trailer. And in that, like Quan Chi is sort of like in the background, and he still has the features of the previous versions of him. So at least in that, so
That first
so I
reveal.
sort
Yeah.
of, I mean, it kind of did still have a little bit of me in there, but I was like, all right, whatever, it's gonna be like, it's fine. I did this. Maybe I can just say that. Okay, I'm a bald dude, so yeah, it's totally me, right? And nobody's gonna believe me anyway. So like, whatever. And then the thing comes out, dude,
Yeah.
and it's like, holy crap. So
Yeah.
I'm basically still in that holy crap mode right now. Many of my friends have the game. My bandmate is actually like, bro, I get PTSD from like arguments that we used to have on tour. So I don't think I can, if I'm gonna play you in this game, I don't think I can be the one that kills you. I have to shout him out, boss him. He knows all this stuff, and he's been waiting for this for probably longer than I have. Um, but and yeah, and again, like I say these things with the like, this is super cool, and I think that simultaneously, because of where we are right now in this conversation about AI
Oh,
and
yeah.
actors strike and all these things, like it's possible to have these two things to be like, look, man, like I signed the thing. Like, I know I don't want any money, but in terms of like, for example, I'm not John Claude Van Damme or Megan
Mhm.
Fox, or like, I'm still like a struggling actor. I find it a little weird, maybe, that we don't get official credit, which is why again, I'm so thankful to you guys and to like all the other fans that have shouted us out. Because for us, this is like the complicated thing where it's like, it's a livelihood, but it's also just like, I didn't fully grasp it until now. It's like, no, like, it's like my face, like forever. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't,
Well,
like
With
somebody owns my
fatalities soon to be done on them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but also just the idea that like, yeah, somebody kind of like owns my face forever, you know?
you
It's
know,
weird. It's also it's strange, it's cool, and it's like both of those things. And I'm still trying to like process like what that means, you know? So,
sitting here talking to you, it's almost surreal because, we've played through the story mode and there's so many close-ups of your expression or of your facial expressions in the game. And
yeah.
seeing you here now on the screen, it's like, yeah, there's Quan Chi right
Yeah.
there. And
No,
it's
and it's cool, from all the people that have been saying that, whatever, the face matching has been really good between my face and Quan Chi. So, a lot of people have messaged me. I've never gotten this kind of like fan type messaging before. Like, I never used
uh-huh.
to use my Twitter or whatever. So yeah, it's cool. It's weird. That when
Yeah.
people ask me like, what do you think about it? Both of those things.
On your Reddit post, you mentioned a couple years ago you were offered this role and such, and you said
Mhm.
yes. And then you sort of liken it to the ongoing discussions of AI, the current
Yeah.
strikes in Hollywood, the future of yourself and your peers, and how you can continue to do this work with these sort of things in mind, bearing in mind that you need to make a living during it
Right.
and doing it, sorry. And it's a very sensible question, in my opinion, to ask. And that's what we really want to discuss with you because there's so much, even just within this short post, there's so much in there that is actually all very good questions to be asking
Mhm.
of the industry and just to bring up as a discussion as a whole.
You mentioned basically you had one final form to sign before you went into everything. Was there anything on there saying this is your face for a single game, or was there any
No,
kind
it's
of term set up
in
for that?
perpetuity forever till the end of
Wow.
time. Till the end of time. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
And I
that's
mean, those sorts of contracts are pretty standard in gigs, kind of like across the board. So these are some of the things that I think the industry is wrestling with now. But yeah, it's basically forever. And it's not that exclusively, like, obviously I can still use my face and do the rest of my life, but
but it's a
it's
one-time fee for your face forever.
exactly. Yeah. And again, it's forever. And people are like, well, if you know what you know now, would you still have done it? And I'm like, I don't know. I think maybe yes, because it's cool, but at the same time, like, is this me signing my own, like end of career thing. Like I think about all,
Yeah.
and a lot of us
It's
do
such
all
a
the time.
unique situation to be in.
It
Like,
it
you're
is, and also as a voice actor, for sure, this is a huge discussion in the voiceover community, in the,
Mhm.
audio books and stuff, and just the
Yeah.
idea I don't know. I still don't know. I've been wrestling with this, like, for months, and I'm not I'm just not 100% sure, how I feel about it, you know?
Your
People are like,
mind's
"No, no, but what about the exposure? It's so cool." And, like, yeah, man, obviously, like, hopefully, maybe it'll help, if I get an audition and it's just one extra thing that I do, which is cool. I'm not even really thinking about it just for myself. I'm trying to, like, now that I have this opportunity to just think about, like, fellow actors and other people that are doing this, what is the future gonna look like for us? And if people can make a whole hours of a movie with just
Mhm.
a few photos of your face, like, I mean, it's cheaper. Why would you bother getting me? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you know?
It reminds me of the old days of the video game itself. Back when Midway first started, they would take pictures of real people and they would use their likeness for these character sprites.
Yeah,
And that led to issues with Midway and the various actors that portray these characters with
it did.
legal
Okay.
situations. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's almost like history repeating itself in a way, but I'm sure, the legalities of it are more
That's interesting.
defined at this point.
Yeah, and just very recently, there is a Bollywood actor, an Indian actor, Anil Kapoor, who just won the first AI kind of likeness case
Oh,
in
wow.
India. So it seems like as the technology is developing, we are slowly, hopefully, getting to a point where these things are taken into consideration. But it's tough, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how it's going to play out. Even just the WGA, the Writers Guild, after they did reach their agreement, it turned out that the studios basically, when it came to the actors, they, like, walked away because
Mhm.
Yeah.
they didn't even meet any of their, so it's, I don't know.
Apparently, they
I
even
kind of personally
decreased
thought that,
the
like,
offer.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, I thought, like, okay, a lot of us were thinking, like, okay, well, the WGA thing sorted itself out, so SAG's probably next, and then apparently not. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be an uphill battle for a while.
I mean, the legalities of this are very interesting in terms of,
Yeah.
well, I mean, really everything we've mentioned, but even specifically with AI, especially when you have people who, let's just say, are trying to, I can't even say reform. I have to actually say to form these actual laws, because
Right.
Yeah.
those older generations really tend to be the ones sort of making this kind of thing happen, and really those are the ones who are very, very out of touch. And it's just it's scary to know really how these things are coming into play, at least within the US specifically. When you look at it sort of an international scope, I would say that the EU tends to be very much more um, competent. And even then, that's I don't want to say this in an insulting manner, but I don't mean it to the extent where they are completely competent in how they're doing things, because there's always so much to it, which really you have to get the perspectives of so many different people, the people involved in it, people who are writing it, who have the experience to be able to say, hey, I can write these laws with regards to this, but then I don't understand how this works with for this person, and how this works for this company, and how this will affect these people for the future, or how this will
Mhm.
affect certain things retrospectively, things like that. But it's just very scary, and especially now just with the AI thing itself, because, for example, you could have gone in and given photos of your face, and for all we know, let's just say they have used AI technology maybe to make your face work within the story. But
Mhm.
then if some laws come into play where it's like, okay, yes, anybody who has signed their face away in perpetuity
Right.
can really have their face used for whatever reasons,
Right.
whatever
Or some
usage.
other company comes in and buys that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
That asset.
and then I end up
exactly.
being a fucking terrorist. Then I, like, the whole point of
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like, bro, it's all over. So
Gosh, yeah.
yeah,
It's
I mean,
just scary.
I laughingly, but, like, that's literally something that I thought,
I mean, we
so
laugh because it's
yeah,
just so ridiculous to the extent that we should actually be afraid of how ridiculous it
yeah,
can get, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Now, regarding, the actual process itself, did you expect to possibly be doing any voicing at all, or was it just
No, and
face
in
scanning?
retrospect, I was so excited to be there that, ironically, I am a voice act I mean, actually, so Sean, who is the voice actor, who also ironically is another bald brown dude like myself, um, who He's super great at it, but it's funny looking back on it, it would have been I would have been like, "Hey, I also do voices," but like whatever. He did a great job. And he's got a really impressive, I look up to him for like voice. Like for me, I don't have much of an animation kind of VO career at all.
Mhm.
I've been told that my voice is a little more suited to soothing narration and putting people to sleep kind of stuff. So, or narrating titles like, about science fiction and stuff maybe, but I'm trying to do a little bit more of that.
Could you see yourself, I mean, possibly trying out to get your voice into Mortal Kombat at some point in the
I
future?
would love to. It's been a dream of mine to try. It's so I mean, it's so hard to get into animated VO. I've been in this industry for a little bit for a few years. It's just tough. Maybe I haven't had the right opportunity yet. Maybe honestly, when it comes to animation, I probably need a little bit more training to explore voices and stuff that are different. I do characters and stuff within audiobooks, so I have experience with that. But I think from the little that I do understand of it, the animation VO world is quite different,
Yeah.
and it's a very, very different skill set. So it's definitely something that I would be interested in, like exploring.
We do have past episodes with previous guests who've been involved in the voice acting of Mortal Kombat, for example,
Cool.
Jameson Price, who really, I mean, I mean, it's funny. I'm like plugging our own episode to you, but you might find this specific episode with Jameson Price very interesting because he actually goes into heavy detail about how the voice acting differs for animations or anime,
Yeah.
et cetera, and it's a very very interesting process. So I mean, just to hear you say that, you're obviously already aware of these
Mhm.
things, but it is definitely a very very cool process.
Yeah.
In addition to everything else that goes on in Mortal Kombat, for example, and all these other shows and such.
You had mentioned in your Reddit post, you said they paid me once and never have to again, never even have to give any credit anywhere.
That's
And there's
right.
nothing I can do about it. So that really surprises me as we've been, kind of following the various staff members that have gone into making this game. I did notice that it is difficult to find out what the facial actors are for
Yeah,
each of
and
these characters.
another YouTuber, he made a YouTube video specifically about my character and my post as well, and he was like, and that's kind of when it occurred to me that maybe this, being a bit of an outsider, obviously to the gaming community, like maybe this is an interesting thing to talk about with people, just because he was like, yeah, it's hard for us. We have to do a bunch of digging to like even figure out who these people are. And yeah, in the back of my mind, I never knew. I just assumed that like, yeah, the way that on IMDb or whatever, like they have people's voices and you know who they are, that they'll be like at the end of again, this is me with my backwards ass reminiscing of what Mortal Kombat used to be like, that there'll be like credits or something and they'll be like,
Oh, they
people's
used to have
face.
that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like
Yeah.
maybe, Quan Chi, amalgamation of Shahjehan and I forget the other guy's name from the
Sean,
previous.
that's a good
So, but
question.
yeah,
It was
no,
a
that
small one.
you're exactly right on there.
I'm curious as well as to the actual process as much as you can say, like in terms of how much freedom did you have behind approaching the character and such?
Some comments I've seen where people are like, you did such a great job. I feel a little guilty. Like I'm so sorry to bum you out, bro. I didn't do anything.
And for
And
most
then,
of our
yeah.
audience members who aren't familiar with this process, generally to make up a character, there's about three different people that go into it. There's the body motion capture artist, there's the face model, such as yourself, and then
Mhm.
there is the facial motion capture artist. And they basically take your expressions and use that to model out a structure that's going to go over top of these facial mocap artists. It's so interesting because there's different people who all go into performing your character, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's your face, like you mentioned earlier.
This whole thing, the whole reasoning behind that post, to artists, like credit is everything.
Oh yeah.
Our credit, our IP, or the things we write, the music I make. I remember once I like played a guitar solo for friend. I was like, dude, you don't have to pay me. Just shout me out, you know? And I got burned there. Obviously, yes, money's great and everybody wants more money, but like that's really that's your whole thing. Yeah, it's great that all my friends can play me, but if no one knows that it's but the cool well, I will say because of people like you and all the fans, the few that I've interacted with, people are giving me the credit that I just felt like I deserved a little bit, So I'm very,
Yeah.
very thankful for that.
On that topic itself, actually, did anybody figure out that it was you, apart from people that, knew you personally?
Yes. So I need to just double check and shout out this specific Twitter user. Again, I never used really Twitter before this. The handle is at Camille Leonard, Quan Chi's CEO of Quan Chi Stans, is
Oh, okay.
the handle. So
Yeah,
this was the
please.
first person to basically say that through my own digging, at least as the first person that I saw, I was able to determine that Shahjehan Khan, and from there, that's where everybody started to make videos and stuff. And then I think Dan Allen Gaming, he made a video of all the face models, which got a ton of views and stuff.
That must be pretty surreal having somebody like literally find your that
That's
it
when
was
it
your
started.
face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that those 24 hours were wild. And then shortly thereafter, I made like a post of like my face and the Quan Chi face side by side, and I made that kind of like the Reddit and Facebook and Instagram posts that you guys were talking about.
Question I asked you earlier about whether or not you see that the door is still open for you to go and voice a character in Mortal Kombat, and obviously your response was hell yeah. But
Yeah.
it's a weird sort of thing for me to look at, because on one hand it's like, I'd love to do that as well, but then on the other hand it's like, but I'd also like to be treated fairly for my face. You know what I
Right,
mean? So
yeah.
does that affect your opinion on that answer at
honestly,
all?
until you just said that, it would be kind of funny to be like, well, yeah, I'd love to voice my own face. But but again, I don't want to like. Sean is great at it, so I'm not. Like he's awesome. So like I don't. I'm not
But
trying
even
to,
another
like,
character, for
yeah,
example.
but sure, yeah. I think it would be. Yeah, it would be great. Like, of course, and this is what I do. This is what I love doing. Like, one of the things I'm trying to do more of this year, other than animation and stuff, is audio dramas. I love those. Acting, performing, however it is done, I just like to do it. So I would 100% love to do more of it.
With Quan Chi himself, obviously you mentioned that you enjoyed the games very, very early on, but you didn't keep really up to date with them. Were you aware of Quan Chi prior to the role?
No, so I told my bandmate he lost his fucking mind, but I didn't say who the character was. So the first thing he said was, "Dude, you look like Quan Chi." So he predicted it. So
That's
yeah.
actually awesome.
It's funny, you actually look a lot like Quan Chi from Mortal Kombat Conquest to me, who was played by Donnie Moropis. And so
Great guy. Great guy.
oh yeah, he's been on the show too, and we've
Awesome.
talked with him, and so it's cool to see, so you guys
Maybe we
have
should all
similar
start a
instructors.
support group or something.
You guys
like
should all start a
Quan
band.
Chi.
like a hardcore band.
Quan Chi.
The Brotherhood of Shadow. Now, has that sort of affected your favorite character? Obviously, we asked you at the beginning who your favorite character is. Has this brought up Quan Chi in your eyes?
Dude, I gotta play the game before I answer that
Yeah.
question.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I need to. I think it's time. I think it's funny. Like people were like, I was like, no, I don't like get the game. I still gotta go buy it. They're like, what? So I was like, no, I just haven't like got the game yet. So I'll probably get it. But yes, a bunch of my friends have it. My new band as well. Like they have it, so they've been playing.
How has your association with becoming the face of Quan Chi shaped your profession and your personal journey?
Again, it's pretty early. You mean in terms of like as an actor?
And even in your personal life, you've mentioned that you've had people call you up and knowing that it's you right away.
I see. I
Um,
see.
Yeah.
Well, I get up every morning and I perform a fatality on my cat. No, I'm kidding. Um, so it's been a year of this and the Succession thing, and I was actually a major character in a Lifetime movie this year. It's pretty hilarious. It's like a murder mystery. So
Uh-huh.
there are three big things for me that happened in my career. I think this is one of them. And I got back to touring. But like I'm still very much a struggling creative person, guys. Like I am in debt. We live in a very modest apartment. We don't own it. We rent our, so it's in terms of the like, I think, and I'm probably guilty of this too a little bit. Like I'm starting to see more and more the whole like, this idea that someday you will arrive or feel like you're at the pinnacle something, there's always one next step, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that whether it's this or whether it's Succession or whatever, or any of these things, like, it's still so much of an uphill battle to do this stuff. And I don't say battle just because we're talking about Mortal Kombat. Um, that,
Fight.
yeah, round 3 of your life, you're 40. So, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I'm super happy and proud when I sit and look at my life in a very, like, meta way, that I have literally accomplished every goal I ever had and then some. But I still kind of, like, have a lot left to do, and it's sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming to think about, I'm not gonna just, like, chill and have some kids, or, or that's not what I want, or, like, I just there's always gonna be this part of me that is just seeking to be part of something else. And does that mean that I am not satisfied enough with, like, myself? This is getting very meta very quickly.
Oh,
And,
that's
like,
good.
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, like, so I think maybe that's something that I wrestle with these days, is, like, what is it that is enough to, like, fill? And sometimes it does feel like you are fulfilled. Like, I've had periods like that with my band, because the band was, like, a very community oriented experience where we got to meet like-minded people, and we were, like, a political band would help people feel like they belonged at a time when a lot of people didn't feel like they could express themselves openly as, like, Americans, or whatever. I don't know where this specific experience is yet on that journey for me. I guess now I'm going to have to go to some video game conferences. Like, is that a thing that we do?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
so can I just do that? Can I just, like, I don't even know, dude. I've
Yeah.
never, like, my bandmate was like, "Bro, you gotta go to Evo or Evo with
Evo,
me,"
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
is that can I just, like, go there and just, like, walk around and be like, "Hey, guys."
Oh, you could even cosplay if you
Yeah,
wanted, and
I was
Okay.
gonna say, do the full cosplay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I might have to go to the gym a little bit more, but, just, but yeah, so that part remains to be seen, let's see
That's
what
cool.
what the future holds.
I kind of want to bring back to Mortal Kombat for one sec,
Sure.
just because it's a question I've asked you about if you'd voice another character. But with everything that we've just discussed, would you also face scan for another character if you had the
That
opportunity?
I would think twice about. I would
Hmm.
hope that there would be some method by which, there could be some more protections in
Mm.
there, and the problem, man, is if you say, like, a lot of people say, I think, the same thing to, like, the way we started this whole thing, like, not taking roles that you feel are stereotypical or whatever, like,
Yeah,
somebody's always going to take it,
Yeah.
so what in the acting sense, like, ideally you want someone who understands the nuances to be making the story, so the story doesn't exist in the first, so that character type thing. But with this, I don't know. I feel like I already did that once, so I
hmm
got that out of it. So, like, I don't like, why would, if they, but I mean, they already scanned me for one, so why would they need, like, if they are going to make me another character, they already
that's
have
also a fair
me,
point. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I remember someone asked me this the other day. They were like, "I'm surprised that they even needed you to come in. Couldn't they just do it from digital?" And I know that there's some things about, like,
lighting,
the way,
etc.,
yeah, and
etc.
all that,
Yeah,
but I don't know. And that's the other scary part, is that we're probably getting to a point where they don't need us to come in at all, or maybe they can just find my photo online.
well,
So
that's actually what I kind of wanted to mention. That this
yeah,
really reminds me of that Black Mirror episode,
Black
Jonah
Mirror, yeah,
Norfolk.
exactly. This is why we were talking about it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's scary. It is
yeah,
scary.
Yeah.
yeah. I want to just be like, Netherrealm, Mortal Kombat, thank you. This shit is amazing. I never imagined that I would do this. It's just weird, and I'm figuring out why it's weird. I'm not, like, mad at you. I feel like I just wanted to say that. I'm very thankful for every
Yeah,
opportunity that I get. Always, it's a
Mhm.
given. But yeah, that doesn't. I just want to, make sure that, like, people understand that, like, it's just
It's
something that
just
we just have to think about this stuff.
Yeah, it's an
exactly.
interesting talking point right now
Yeah,
because there's so much happening in the industry, as we
yeah,
mentioned before. We talked about the SAG after strikes, and
yeah,
what that's all about,
Yeah, and also
kind of.
just so people are clear, Succession was done last year before the strikes. I am not a full member of SAG, but I do wholeheartedly support all.
Oh, yeah, thank you for
So,
clarifying that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
As you're saying, thank you to NRS, etc. Obviously, it's a great opportunity, and I think one thing that people also need to be aware of is you can be very happy to be a part of something, or you could be cool
yes,
with somebody, or happy for the opportunity, but still also criticize or bring up the points that you need to
absolutely. And
discuss.
this is something that creatives always are told that they should be grateful for even having the and that part and that often and unfortunately that kind of like does that to us sometimes to not fight for the things that we deserve.
Yeah,
Hmm.
So that's why these discussions and all this stuff is so important.
sort of creates that apathy in a way, which
Yeah.
really only brings
Yeah.
positives to one side of the
Yeah.
of
For sure.
the.
Like, I should, oh my God, I should be so grateful. Like if you, even if I just, just reading all the comments on the post of the thing that I made, which is very, very, we could do a whole episode if I just read every, comment that whether it's an actor friend of mine left on my post or someone random who's like, bro, what are you complaining about? Like, this is the coolest shit ever. Are you kidding? And I agree with chunks of all of them, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Thank you. Who
interesting.
needs money? Who needs food? Who needs to eat?
In your eyes, kind of looking back at your career, have there been any significant roles which stand out to you even now?
In 2020, I had the opportunity to do some virtual theater um, with a company called Fresh Lime Soda Productions in New York. It focuses on South Asian artists. It's based on this old soda from like India. It's a kind of a drink thing that you could drink in India and Pakistan and stuff. But anyway, um, we did this, me and another actor, another great actually actor named Sean Jane. We've been sort of called each other's twins, although now I don't have any hair. So I think we don't look like each other more. But anyway, so we got to do this play called Guards at the Taj, which is about the Taj Mahal. And so the guy who built the Taj Mahal is Shah Jahan, the Emperor Shah Jahan. And the story is about these two friends who are guarding it as it's being built and as it's about to be completed. And it's a play about power and authority and just taking orders. It's just a two-person play. It's usually done live, but it was actually very well suited to like Zoom and COVID times. We kind of worked with some cool projection designers. That was one of the first times that I got to inhabit a role that really I just felt very closely connected to. I don't know if it was all because it was in the identity stuff, like doing the play that's actually from the subcontinent and feeling like able to jump into a story that way. That for sure really sticks with me. Then I would also say when I was getting sober, and I mentioned briefly that I got back into acting through a theater troupe. So the theater troupe, they were formerly called the Improbable Players. It's now called Second Act, but it's actually a troupe based here in Boston. They now have an Ohio chapter that is made up of all artists that are themselves in recovery. The plays are designed to just be very simple, kind of like minimal props and stuff. And they mostly tour high schools and middle schools and like community groups and stuff. And they have a series of plays that are about different facets of addiction and family stuff with addiction. And for me, I remember I spent a year or two just touring up and down the East Coast with that theater company, doing these plays day after day, night after night. And just after you do the play, you tell your own like 1 minute story at the end and then invite the audience to ask questions. So like mostly high school kids and stuff ask you questions related to addiction and like your own story. And doing that as a brown person, as a Muslim, as a whatever, that was a really, I think, important informational experience for me,
Yeah,
uh,
for sure.
for, a whole host of reasons.
One question that really kind of comes to mind based on your whole career and the experiences you've had detailed for us is, like, are there any sort of mentors or peers that you have had who have possibly helped you in your careers? Maybe helped you with advice itself, maybe helped you with getting into certain areas where you didn't think you'd be a part of them.
So many people in the halls and rooms of like programs like AA and NA, I would call mentors and friends. And when I did eventually go back to college, a professor, Yana Sladkova, I just was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. I was back in school. I was 27. I was like, I don't know. She sort of just helped me sort through some of this like identity stuff. And then I guess like in my early 20s, my bandmates in Caminas, we sort of like were each other's like networks and source of support. And also like the cool thing about the Boston community is it's definitely something I feel a little bit more a part of now. Part of like
Close-knit
the
community.
the creative folks here. It's an interesting time where like you actually don't necessarily need to go move to New York or LA. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with these places. I've been to all of them. It's just cool that we're able to like do our own thing a little bit too.
For those of our listeners who are stepping into some of these creative avenues and creative fields that you've worked in, do you have any piece of advice that you'd like to give to them or anything that you wish you had received when you were starting out?
I bet a lot of people say this, but just like try your best not to be like limited by whatever narrow conception you might have of yourself related to like your whatever you think you might be. Like, don't let that stop you from trying something else, something that terrifies you. You do truly have to do stuff which terrifies you. With this industry in particular, again, I'm sure I'm definitely not the only person to say this, but you just rejection and stuff becomes like I get rejected 100 times a month. It will get to you in the beginning, but it's literally a numbers game. If you start thinking of it that way, that it's just about repetition. And I'm sort of learning this. You can't really do this thing alone. I can't. I don't know about other people, but if I spend too much time in my head, dude, it's like I don't even know. I might not even get up. So yeah.
I think that's a sentiment echoed by many people. It's just one of those things where you
Yeah.
just sort of have to. It's so simple to say, but you just sort of have to accept some
Yeah.
of the things that you do or who you are and such. Now, speaking of accepting who you are and everything, we've mentioned this on the previous section of the episode, but your podcast, we've already talked about it, and our listeners can definitely hear more about you and your experience through your podcast, which is called King of the World. Is there anything else that you would like to plug?
I have an interview style show where I talk to other American Muslim creatives called Fawn Boy Friday. It's like a weekly bite-sized thing where I literally have like 10 to 12-minute conversations with different people, different creators. We have an investigative series coming out next year about Martha's Vineyard called Witness Chappaquiddick, which we're very, very excited about. I'm also a co-producer on a short film anthology called Ramadan America, which is coming out next year. We're about to go into production, which are 5 films that are about Ramadan and Eid. They're narrative short fiction films, all sorts of different genres. It's a product of a open screenwriting competition we had for American Muslim screenwriters. We got 50 submissions from all over the place. We picked 5, and our company we're just making them all, and we're going to like release it next year. It's pretty cool. My band that I play with a lot is called Ravi Shovey. I'd love for you to check us out. The one I've
Yeah.
been with that isn't as active anymore, but the one we talked about mostly was called the Caminas. And then, yeah, you can just follow me as I perform fatalities on people for the rest of time. Also,
And possibly
So-
yourself.
Yeah.
We'll be leaving links in the description.
yeah,
to-
and I guess we're all gonna play. We're gonna play that when this DLC thing happens. That we're
Oh,
gonna play together.
Yes, I think we
Yes,
definitely.
I think
should.
that's a
I think
great idea. I like.
It'll be a
let's
lot
do
of
it.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll both pick up Quan Chi immediately.
sounds
and
good.
just-
So, for those of our listeners who are hearing this, keep an eye out for our Soul Streams. That's our live show that we air on Twitch and YouTube. And through that, you'll be able to come and meet Quan Chi himself.
Let's
the
do it.
face
Yeah,
of
I'll
Quan
talk
Chi.
to
Yeah.
anybody. Awesome.
Well, in the lead up to you performing your first MK1 finisher, I have to ask: do you have a favorite finisher from the previous games?
What was the one that? What were a couple of Raidens from Mortal Kombat 2? Do you remember?
The electric grab, was that on it?
That
Yeah,
was
there's the one where he shocked them until they exploded. And then there was another
Dude,
one.
how could I forget about Scorpion?
Yes,
How
that's what I was
did
expecting.
forget about Scorpion? Okay, you're gonna have to go back to the beginning and just forget everything that I said. Scorpion was my jam, dude. The whole like hook thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I might have to replace what I said. I said Liu Kang, Sonya, and Raiden. I think Scorpion, dude. Let's replace it with Scorpion. Yeah.
All right.
Wow. Okay. And now, didn't he do one where he used to like, either he would like fire would shoot out of his face, or he would like eat your head or something. Am I making that
Almost.
up?
Pulls off his mask. It's a skull, and he blows
Yes,
fire at you. The
that's
toasty.
what it was. Yeah, that was pretty badass from MK2.
So, where can our listeners actually find you? What's the best place for them to keep an eye on what you're up to?
I guess probably Instagram. My name is Shahjehan, Shahjistan.
It's a great pun.
Yeah.
Username. I liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's probably out of the that's probably the place that I'm on the most. Yeah, for
And
sure.
So
And
we'll also leave links to that in our description, and
Cool.
you can find it on the show notes on mortalkombatonline.com.
that sounds good.
So thank you, firstly, to all of our listeners for stopping by the Realm Kast, and thank you to Shahjehan Khan, Shahjistan, for joining us on this episode. Really, it's been such a pleasure talking.
Thank you. No,
Yes.
this has been it's such a treat. I feel so lucky to be able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you can find Yanni and myself, Phantom, on the Mortal Kombat group on Facebook, as well as on our social media pages at Realm Kast.
You can also join our official Discord channel hosted on Mortal Kombat Online server through the link in the description, where we discuss Mortal Kombat along with our listeners.
And special thanks to Uppercut Editions for their continued support. The Realm Kast is the official podcast of Mortal Kombat Online.
And you can catch up on all episodes of the Realm Kast on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, and MortalKombatOnline.com, as well as links to our live show, The Soul Stream, can be found on MKO or Realmcast.com. Thank you.